Joe Scarborough of MSNBC, former Republican congressman, has some thoughts on why Kamala Harris lost. Not going to be good thoughts. Here he is basically talking about how it must be cancel culture and identity politics. And let me just say this. Kamala Harris refused to mention her gender the entire race. She would be asked about it and say, I want to be a president for all Americans. She would be asked about her race. I want to be a president for all Americans. The idea that this is the issue in this race was anything that she did on that front. I'm sorry. It's just misogyny and racism because she existed as a black woman in the race without emphasizing that at all. So if this is still Scarborough's takeaway, I think it's lazy at best and has a lot of malicious undertones, which is most likely what the truth is. But let's just play it and then we'll react.
I decided to go with the guy who wants to burn it all down.
Let's dig a little deeper because you have that stacked on top of what happened on college campuses this fall, stacked on top of what's been happening on college campuses over the past 4 or 5 years. I have said this on the air, and every time I've said it, people said, oh, you're just saying that because you're a white conservative. No, I'm just saying it because every Democrat that we have ever sat down with dinner with over the past 5 years who have kids that go to colleges say their kids are afraid to speak in class because they'll be canceled. Let me say that again.
Oh my God.
And they're all
stupidest shit I've ever heard in my life.
Everybody that we've had dinner with, if they have a kid in college, you go, how the Red Sox going? Yeah, fine. Yeah. So they're eating. Oh, beautiful day today, wasn't it? Yeah. You know, my daughter at University of Virginia, she's afraid to raise her hand in class because if she says something that's politically incorrect, she will immediately be canceled. She'll be shunned from class. She'll be destroyed in social media by noon. So they just sit in class quiet. Now, if you knew which camera,
oh my God, no one cares about your dumb daughter, dude.
Out there say, oh, that's just like a conservative, white, Southern guy, that's what you're losing.
And this is MSNBC. MSNBC is playing like white, like anti-white guilt content, and then they wonder why like Republicans are beating liberals because they can't even stay on message. This guy had a direct ear to the president. Joe Biden. No one was more lauded by Joe Biden than Joe Scarborough. He would watch him like Trump watched the Gorilla Channel, and yet he's pretending as though the Kamala campaign was somehow divergent from the Joe Biden campaign in any meaningful way. Like look in the mirror,
because it's a black woman at the forefront. I mean, which is insane. It's ridiculous. And I mean, his anecdotes are so silly. But this was Biden's favorite show. Like in terms of just like what if we could be a fly on the wall for some of the way that these Democratic consultants refer to these issues. You know, I think it's really difficult for us to understand. We had a representative, Ruah Roman, on who's a Palestinian, representative, state rep from Georgia, and she was talking about how Biden's empathy gap was so striking for her when she and other people in the Muslim and Arab community went to him and showed him photos of children in Gaza, and he goes, "I've seen it all. I've seen it all. I've seen all the reports." I think it's really difficult for us to understand as outside observers how insulated they are from real reality. Like they're hearing this argument by Scarborough and going, that makes sense. It wasn't that people were hurt by the economy not working for them and that they were upset about the Democrats and lashed out at them and that the Democrats didn't run a transformative campaign when it was needed. No. It's because they were too focused on identity and cultural issues in the campaign that didn't focus at all, really, except to just call out Trump's racism and fascism, at least as it relates to her identity, wasn't focusing on that whatsoever. It's just revisionist history to obscure the fact that there needs to be a more material campaign going forward.
Yeah, I mean,
also, the warning, the absolute like warning, like the red light that should be flashing about
whoever told him this, where that experience came from, the people he has private dinners with. Joe Scarborough, big ass TV pundit with the direct line to the White House, like you said. I wonder what type of people he's having private dinners with. It's not the mainstream America that's voicing.
Yeah, exactly. This is ultimately the problem with most of the like moneyed punditry class on MSNBC, on in New York Times, all over the place, right? They consider the anecdotes that are derived from their dinner parties with their incredibly wealthy friends probably one of the only circles, the social circles, social circles people could be in, where they're like constantly rubbing shoulders with like Republicans who are extremely far right and Democrats or people who consider themselves to be extremely liberal. And so a lot of their ideas are derived from the anxieties and tiptoeing around certain topics at these dinner parties to not make the guests feel upset, whether it's not targeting big business, because we've heard recently that was a decision that was derived from like Harris's brother-in-law, who is the chief legal officer at Uber.
Tony West, yes.
Tony West. Like a lot of these ideas about what's going to play in the streets in liberal circles come from the fact that they hang out with Republicans a lot, or at least people who are Republican curious, Republican friendly, people who imagine themselves going to either party depending on how the wind blows. But that's not representative of any other part of America. Like very few people, I think, exist in the same kind of social circles where they're hearing that their friend's daughter is deeply concerned with being canceled and, at least aren't explicitly right wing, or they can still consider themselves to be partially left wing.
I wonder what issue has they're kind of concerned about in the past year that people are having trouble. I mean, I'll just say it explicitly. I think if you go into college as a young person and you have been indoctrinated into Zionism your entire life, it's time to actually listen to what the rest of your classmates have to say. That is what Joe Scarborough is talking about here.
Right. Also, in an analogous sort of thing that's going on, I'm seeing a lot of Democratic representatives coming out and throwing trans people under the bus. Oh, yeah. I've seen Tom Suozzi and Seth Moulton both come out and say, I don't know why I couldn't say this to begin with, but I'm saying it now. We got to stand up to trans kids in women's sports. And it's like, what are you talking about? Like, that was not an issue at all. Even Donald Trump, in one of his ranting moments, accidentally spelled the truth out a couple of days ago when he was like, we're going to stop trans people from playing, trans kids from joining women's sports, even though no one's ever brought that up to me organically before. He said that. He said that, Donald Trump. Like, this is not an issue that people care about, that regular people care about. Trans kids are not the reason Dems lost, and it's disgusting, first of all, to even blame them. Like, well, it is.
It was part of why part of what gave me confidence about this race was that they were going with this strategy, which was an objective failure for the Republicans in the midterms. They got wiped out using that strategy. But the problem is that what won the day at the top of the ticket was the unpopularity of the Biden administration. And, Trump also seemingly outperformed Republicans down ballot. Like, the flip side of this is, yes, the Harris campaign and the continuation from the Biden side of things was bad for the Democrats down ballot. But the Republicans also have nothing. Like, the American public likes Trump more than they like the Republicans. And there is a view of him as he's viewed as more moderate than that, like, which
has always been true.
Then the Republican, I mean,
it was true in 2016. It's always been true.
Always been true. Always been true. I mean, and that sounds crazy to us, but it's because he is, like, particularly for the group that he won, which is Gen X. Seniors and young people mostly went for Harris, 35 and under, and then 65 and under went for Harris. That middle block.
65 and over, you mean? 65 and over.
Yes, sorry. They went more for Trump. That was the demographic that he won, and they're more populous, and also they've been watching him on The Apprentice. Like, he's a normal figure in their life.
I think he's a fascist. I think he had Hitler's speeches on his bedside table. I also think he's less of a fascist than the standard Republican. I think that's just like Ron DeSantis, these type of freaks. Like,
well, JD Vance is his VP, exactly. So we'll see.
These guys are like Trump is a celebrity, and he legit like went to all the Democrats like weddings and shit like that. Like he is like, I think has a will to power and sort of interest in Nazism, like historically.
He's a narcissist. He's like a general narcissist.
Mark Robinson, like this is par for the course. But
it does. I mean, at the end of the day, though, like that's the problem. Is it doesn't matter because he's gonna have JD Vance as his VP, and if he has no core beliefs, it doesn't matter. Like Vance will just Dick Cheney him and get whatever he wants.
Yeah.
Vance is like legitimately a nationalist, fascist associated with Peter Thiel and his project of fascism.
Those are fascists. Those are Nazis.
And they now have a direct line to this administration. So it doesn't really, I think, like there's no operative difference. But the problem is just that perception, despite 10 years of the Democrats saying it, hasn't penetrated. And it's because he's been normalized. Like Ryan Cooper had a piece in The Prospect today about the media's complicity in this, and that's part of it too. But the problem always will be, and has been my entire lifetime, that the Democrats don't lead the media. The Republicans are excellent at getting their issues into the media and getting them to accept it, whether it be immigration, whether it be even like the trans sports issue. And then maintenance on the other side doesn't combat it. Like you gotta get the media to talk about agenda items on your terms by repeating them over and over again and not just playing defense the whole time.
Well, I mean, I agree with all that. And I also don't want to build up Trump too much, because I do think a big portion of why he won is because he was a Republican running on generally Republican and conservative talking points surrounding the economy and immigration, and how specifically immigration is, illegal immigration, in his words, is causing the rising cost of living, the lack of opportunities for Americans that they're experiencing currently. And the issue is that is a narrative, that is a connection that is neo-fascist, obviously. That's a neo-fascist talking point, but it's one that has become laundered into mainstream discourse by, every part of the mainstream political spectrum. Even Democrats will pay that idea lip service, this idea that letting in too many immigrants, letting in too many people is somehow like deleterious to the living conditions of natural born citizens. And it sans any kind of political ideology or political rhetoric that refocuses the problem and the material conditions that people are experiencing onto the actual causes, like the fact that we're continuing to funnel money up to the wealthiest people, the fact that we're not investing public money into our communities, we don't build public housing, we don't really do any of those things anymore. People are going to be left with no choice but to wonder, okay, well, one side is saying that the problem is really complicated and can't be solved and involves some sort of really weird public-private partnership. The other side is saying that it's because we let too many people in this country, and that's why I don't have a house, and that's why I can't afford things. And even the side that's saying it's more complicated than that is still paying lip service to the other side's idea that it's because of the immigration point, even tangentially. The outcome is obvious. When the people who are sort of low information voters are going to look at how much things cost, look at their rent going up, look at the fact they can't afford houses, and look for the solution, and they'll see that basically people agree, but only one side is actively trying to, or at least targeting the problem as is identified by both neoliberal parties. And so I think it just comes down to like the material conditions people are facing are real. Obviously, the social issues people are facing are real too, but we've had 30, 40 years of Republican, neoconservative, neo-fascist talking points that connect people's waning material conditions to some kind of, migrant invasion. And so unless you're going to, tackle the underlying rationale that has been fed to people for all that time, it's going to be very difficult to, win on any kind of platform that doesn't tackle immigration the same way Republicans going to. That's why Democrats shouldn't pay that kind of thing lip service. They make the battle harder for themselves. They make the battle harder for themselves when they concede all these points that are both untrue and racist. I don't think, maybe I was wrong about who was going to win, but I still don't think that like trans people in sports drove a lot of people to the voting booths. That maybe like a handful of Joe Rogan fans and like a handful of like the worst people, but I think think it was mostly people's actual lived conditions and the sudden decline they felt at the beginning of 2020 going through the Biden administration, and no kind of coherent like multi-pronged strategy to target it that caused people to stay home or caused people to come out and vote for Trump. But certainly it didn't cause people to come out and vote for the Kamala Harris campaign, which couldn't explain how she was going to deviate herself from the Biden administration's, at least in their minds, failed economic policies.
Donald Trump literally used illegal migrant labor throughout his life, and exploited immigration services to attack them when they got too uppity. All of these horrible images we see of people walking through the desert for a better life, and the type of like civil pressures put on people because of mass immigration should have been tied directly to people like him. And the closest politician that has been done it since Trump has emerged onto the scene is Marco Rubio in the Republican primary.
Or AOC talked about it with abolishing ICE.
True, yeah.
But
actually going up against him on a debate stage, for instance. Exactly.
They conceded, and it reflected, and frankly, what do fascists do, or what did far right politicians like Trump do? Pit one against another, or pit each other against the other person, right? Like Trump succeeded in successfully pitting Latino people in this country who are here and can vote versus Latino people who are undocumented, who are easy scapegoats because they can't vote. Despite all of his claims about voter fraud, they actually can't.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.